Welcome. Welcome to the last session of the Career Pathways panel discussions. This is part of Science Track. Welcome to Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. I know some of you know this place. You're down the hall from me. A welcome from our partner organizations who endorsed this and put this on. Thank you for being here, our panelists from many of our partner organizations. My name is Louise Carnahan, and I am one of the HR training managers here at the center. So what I'm going to do is have the panelists introduce themselves, what it is they do, and maybe something about you that's kind of fun.
Well, I'll start off.
All right, thank you, sir.
So I am the Mechanical Architectural Power Plant Preventive Maintenance Planner Scheduler for the Facilities Engineering Group at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. And if that's not abundantly clear what I do, I am a facilities engineering planner. So I get involved in a lot of the project management that's going on. I get involved, what I really love to get involved in is the energy conservation work that we do here at the center. That's the real exciting stuff for me. I have a bachelor's degree in facility management. Has anyone ever heard of that before? Not that, oh, good. This morning's session, we had about 30 people here, and one person raised their hand. Maybe not such a well-known field, but it's really, facility management is a place where sustainability and energy conservation meet business. And so it's a really exciting arena, I think, to be involved in, especially in this setting where we've got laboratory and research going on. If you imagine an average house is about 1,700 square feet, the center is 1.7 million square feet. So it's 1,000 times the size of a normal house, and we deal with rooftop and roof leak kind of issues. You've got windows and doors and all the normal stuff that comes with a house, and then you imagine your hot water closet, right? In a normal house, it's not very big. Here, oh, it's about 1,000 times that size. And we've got the boilers and chillers and huge equipment that's all connected and networked together that we monitor and take care of so that the research, the cancer research, can happen. And that's our passion, really, is allowing that research to happen without scientists and researchers worrying about the environment they're in.
You guys give a good tour as well.
Thank you. We love giving tours.
I took my 5-year-old son on it several years ago, and he loved it.
Perfect.
Loved it.
We love to talk about ourselves. Yeah. So I live here close by. I live about 1.5 miles away. It's a 20-minute walk to work for me. And one of the things I love to do in my off time is just hang out in the area. My wife and 3-year-old will walk down halfway and meet me on my way home. We'll hang out at the park and watch the seaplanes or the geese and go out to dinner and head home. So it's just being here close by, I really enjoy. I love being a part of this whole fabric of this area, but particularly being involved with the cancer research here at Fred Hutch.
America.
I'm a third-year graduate student in the Department of Pathology in the School of Medicine at the University of Washington. And so what I do is completely different. And I don't know any of those things he just discussed, but I'm thankful he does them. And so I work on translational medicine. I work on vaccine designs and how they work. And so one of my current projects is looking at HIV vaccine design. And so I collaborate here at the Hutch, so I'm very familiar with the research done here in the area. And so my project is just looking at how these things can be put into place in, the bedside. And what I do for fun outside of the lab is I like to go snowboarding in the winters, and I go hiking in the summers. And being outside a lab is just as important as being inside. Yeah.
Thank you. Andrew.
So I'm the Director of Information Technology at the Institute for Systems Biology, which is about 10 minutes that way by foot, pretty close to Seattle Biomed. And I've been there now for probably almost 12 years. And so, I've seen that organization grow from when we were actually renting space over in the 4545 Roosevelt building from the University of Washington to being up on North Lake Union to moving down here last year. And so we've had a tremendous amount of growth and great things going on over the years. And being the head of information technology is pretty exciting, especially in a mid-sized organization like ISB, because we do an awful lot of different things with relatively few people. And so a lot of people, when they think of information technology, I mean, you probably think of a laptop computer or maybe a desktop on their desk. If you're a scientist that works in computation, maybe you think of computational science. So we have thousands of terabytes of data storage for computational science. We have dozens of nodes of computational cluster capacity, but we also do a lot of other things. We handle phone systems, we handle projectors, we handle microphones in rooms, we handle video conferencing gear for communications, we handle all the software that runs the security systems for our buildings, HVAC systems for our buildings, all sorts of things. So, it's really amazing in an organization like ours that, things you wouldn't even think that are computerized are computerized. I mean, it's always fun when the facilities department comes and asks us for help with something new that turns out was actually run by a machine and they didn't realize it ahead of time. Lighting control systems are their new fun thing they've just discovered that are not actually as simple as they were hoping. So, there's always a lot of extraordinary things. And, over my 12 years with ISB, not only is that organization, but sort of the fun thing is that, that's where pretty much my entire life has revolved around. I met my wife when she was a graduate student going through rotation there. She's now a research scientist at Seattle Children's Research Institute. So, not that far away from what I do still. So, it's always exciting.
And fun thing that you like to do when you're not at work?
Well, the funny thing about IT people is I'm not ever really sure if we're not working. That it's true, but it's pretty much a 24/7 job, and you're always a slave to technology with a phone or something like that. Now, of course, it's a lot easier because in the past, what that meant is you got a page and we drove in. We don't do much of that anymore. It's almost all remote, so at least that's a benefit. But as far as what I like to do in my spare time, I like to travel. So the last 3 months I've been to Canada, Tokyo, New York, Washington D.C., Baltimore, and Boston. So.
Wow. Thank you.
It's a lot of travels in
Well,
3 months.
if your cell
That
phone
sounds
works in all those
awesome.
places,
Yeah.
so
They don't
ironically.
even know where you are.
All right, Jean.
My name is Jean Brovold. I'm a CPA, and I am the controller at Seattle Biomed, which is located very close to here over on Westlake. And I am relatively new to the science industry, actually. I come from the profit world. I worked in social services for a while, and now I'm in the science industry. And I always think the controller has the best title in the agency, but really the worst job. I'm responsible for the financial statements. Here's a set of our statements. There's a lot of numbers in here and a lot of words that explain the numbers, hopefully. And you guys have seen it. I thought I was going to be talking to younger kids, but this is probably one of my main responsibilities is to prepare these statements, and then the tax return, which is, I just did this year's tax return, is 53 pages. So that's a lot of fun. And I just really enjoy supporting the science at Seattle Biomed. We do malaria research, infectious diseases. We study HIV, malaria, what we call emerging and neglected diseases. Some of them I can't pronounce, but just a tremendous work done at Seattle Biomed. So I'm really proud to support that mission. And believe it or not, in my fun time, I'm a sports nut. I still play soccer. I play on an over 50 women's team. And we have fun, we're getting slower and slower, but we have fun. We play every Wednesday, and we go out for a soda afterwards. So that's what I do.
Thank you.
My name is Colleen Steelquist, and I'm the science editor in the communications department here at Fred Hutchinson. I've been at the Hutch for about 20 years and haven't been in the same position for that long. But my position basically means that I write for the public about the science that happens here. And that takes the form of magazines and the website and the annual report and social media, and I think that's it. And I love my job because it sort of gives me an all-access pass to every researcher, every lab here. And so it feeds my curiosity, and it forces me to be a lifelong learner. So I think that's really fun. And I guess in my spare time, I'm an avid baker, which is, the happy marriage of chemistry and butter. So it's good.
Great.
Better.
So I'm going to ask the panel a few questions and then open it up to you for any questions that you happen to have. So how did you get to where you are? I'm guessing that you've had different careers maybe, or maybe you started off studying something else in school and then you ended up where you are now. So anyone can take this and run with it.
So I'll start it off. I, at a pretty young age, started my own finished carpentry painting business. I grew up in a construction family. That was just what I did. And after a few years of that, I got married, and I went, wow, it'd sure be nice to have benefits. And so I hired on at a hospital up north, and I got benefits. But I worked there for about 9 years or so, doing the same carpentry, finish work, working in their maintenance department. And one day, this guy shows up, and he's an intern he was getting a Bachelor of Science in Facility Management. And I went, what? That's a real degree? And at that point, I said, I want that. I'm going to do that. And so I took some business classes. I went on to, there are only 5 universities, by the way, that offer the Bachelor of Science in Facility Management in the U.S. I applied to the closest one, which is only 900 miles away, and apparently they didn't want me. And their minor was in business for that degree, and I kind of geared myself toward that. So the next closest one was over in Michigan. Their minor was in architecture. And so I jumped into that one, and that was great. I mean, I have the business background, then I got to take a bunch of architecture classes. And architecture is just really, really cool stuff. You get to be creative, yet technical, and I loved that. So I finished that Bachelor of Science degree, and as part of that program, they wanted me to do an internship. And so I did that here at Fred Hutch, where they're just phenomenal at doing energy conservation work. And so I studied that with them. They made me measure out how much steam pipe is throughout the whole center. I did some oddball stuff, I must admit, but I did find out that if you made a flagpole out of the steam pipe here at Fred Hutch, it would be as tall as 10 Space Needles. So we have to take care of over 6,000 feet of steam pipe. Fascinating fact that took me hours to figure out. So I thought I'd better share it somewhere. It's over 6,000 feet. Yeah, so over a mile of steam pipe, which of course wears out in time, right? So we need people who can manage that kind of stuff. But that was my route to here. I was here temporary for a while, and eventually they decided, they said, we've dated long enough, let's tie the knot, and they hired me on permanently.
Who else would be willing to share their career path, how they got where they are now?
I can take that.
Yeah, please, Colleen.
I actually had an unusual job in high school. I was a ball girl for the Seattle Mariners, and one of my jobs with that role was taking players around to local hospitals. And I remember visiting Fred Hutchinson and thinking, I think I'd like to work there someday. I mean, it was just very compelling. This was still when we had patients on site and whatnot. And I have always been a writer and, been successful at that, did the high school journalism kind of stuff. And so I got a communications degree, and then I really started working here almost straight out of college. And I worked mostly support roles, and so I was working with science, and all of those roles kind of had a writing element to them. But also worked a lot of years where I was balancing parenthood and working, and so didn't do full-time work for a lot of years. And then about 6, 8, something like that years ago, got into this role after working for about 10 years in the Women's Health Initiative, which is a big national study that is coordinated here. So I worked for the coordinating center and wrote all of their newsletters. So.
Well, I'll tackle it real quick because mine's pretty linear. So the first job I ever had when I was 16 was doing IT help desk support. Guess I never quite stopped as part of the answer. So, after doing that, I went off to University of Washington, did an undergraduate degree in business there because I decided that, IT is kind of one of those things that for the most part you pick up on the job. So I've worked IT during that, did my degree there. While I was at the UW, got hired on at ISB because in fact it had started. I started about, I think, 9 months after it opened. And it was actually only about 3 blocks off the main campus, actually in a UW building at that point. That was after Zyma moved down there. And then, once I was done with college, we started working full-time at ISB and then went back and did my Master's in Public Administration, and here I am now.
I can go.
Sure.
So I actually am from Southern California, so I moved up here 9 years ago to start my undergrad degree at UW. And so during that time, I actually was a collegiate rugby player for the UW. So that whole time I was also working odd-end jobs. And I actually got in the field because my friend knew of a job opening at the UW autopsy facility. And so so the first day I showed up, they told me, they're like, if you can make it past the first day, we'll hire you.
That's all it takes.
What percentage is that?
Low. And so usually the smell gets them. And so I kept working there. That was my sophomore year, and so the whole time I continued to play rugby. I worked at the autopsy facility at UW Medical Center, and then also working odd jobs here and there. So still not knowing if I wanted to stay in science. But I continued my degree in microbiology, and I was actually planning to move back to California because I left the autopsy job, and then I actually got hired on at Harborview for an on-call autopsy job. I really try to leave that profession, to be quite honest. And so they hired me on while I was still an undergrad. And then knowing the chair of the neuropathology department, working with him, he actually offered me an undergrad position in his lab. And then he hired me on as a technician while I was still doing autopsies. It never really ended. And so I worked in his lab for about 2 years and doing autopsies for the next 2 years as well. And then I finally figured out, I think I actually want to continue doing science, but my own research. And so that's what motivated me to go get my doctorate, because I want to do my own research and I want to have my own lab, my own facilities. And I think that's my motivation to continue on in education. And so I'm at UW. Actually, I had many interviews to get my PhD. I went to North Carolina, Minnesota, Irvine, and so I think UW was the place I wanted to be at. And so I came here, and I'm in my 3rd year, and hopefully I'm going to wrap things up in the next year or so. And yeah, that's...
And the autopsy job? Have you left them behind?
So, so when you become a PhD candidate in the life sciences, they ask you not to have any other jobs because, they give you a stipend. But the first class at the UW pathology that's offered comes with an autopsy course.
Did you teach it?
I said, this looks very familiar. Can I just skip this class? And so that was, I think that was my last day in the autopsy room. So far. But every now and then they ask me to take the new graduate students down there to show them. So I come back every so often. But I'm done for now.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Jean, how about your path? It sounds like you had jobs in different industries.
Yes, My path is not that interesting. I fell into accounting somewhat. You know, I always knew I wanted to go into business, and I distinctly remember I was in college, and a friend of mine, I needed a job, and a friend of mine came to school. She said, "Oh, I'm quitting this awful job. I got this job working for this really odd fellow working and doing tax returns." And I said, "Well, I need a job." And she said, you should go because I'm not even going to show up today. So, so I showed up, and it was tax season, and you know he was frantic, and he hired me, and I started photocopying tax returns, and I stayed on after tax season, and I just said, well, accounting's a great profession. Really, I grew to love it very quickly because it's like working puzzles. People think it's boring, and there are some aspects that are not exciting, but it's really like working a puzzle together. And if you like to bring organization into things you do, accounting is a great profession.
So we don't have any students in the room, so we don't need to go back to the path, or do we? Are you a student? No.
I am.
You are a student. You were here for the first two. So you may have some questions about kind of, you know, classes and things like that were helpful. Do you have any questions about that?
You guys can talk about it, whatever you want, and I'll listen.
Okay. Well, because I was gonna say, you know, I know that in my field, people who don't have any experience in what I do want to do what I do. And you probably have had the same kind of thing. People who don't have experience in what you do want to know what's the pathway in. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Anybody can start.
Well, when it comes to facilities management, there are a lot of directions you can approach it from. If you like architecture, if you like interior design, if you like business, if you like hands-on work, if you like energy conservation, if you like project management, it all ties together there. There are ways to coordinate it where you focus mainly on construction and design, if you like that aspect of it. You can focus mainly on operations and maintenance. And again, you can focus on energy conservation. There's a lot of, in our group, we've got guys who have degrees in microbiology. We have guys who have spent 20 years in the Navy. We have guys who just have a lot of construction experience. So there's a lot of pathways into it. And what's really great about it, I think, is that you can find a niche that fits what you're passionate about within the field.
I have a question for you. You say guys, and that may be generic, but I'm guessing it's a male-dominated area. Are more women getting into this field?
We have about 35 people in our department, and maybe 3 of them are women. In classes where people are taking an undergraduate in facility management, it's catching up. When I was there, it was probably about 60-40. Men were still dominant in that number range, but there were a lot more women coming into the field. And again, it's what you're passionate about. It's easy to get into multiple aspects of facility management based on your interests, and so it's an open field for anybody. One of them is an operating engineer, and then we have one at the help desk, and another that is an administrative assistant, accounting assistant.
What advice do you have then, the rest of you, for people who might want to get into your area of work?
For accounting, there's a few specific programs that nonprofits use. So if you want to get into the science accounting, you get to know what those accounting programs are. And if you get familiar with those, you'll be very desirable when you're looking for a job, because they're specific programs, they're complicated programs, because I like to say they do accounting in 3D. They'll slice and dice, you know, your grants and your years and your dates and all different ways that profit accounting doesn't. So if you get to know that, if I'm hiring someone in my department, if they know the program we're using, they're all the way up to the top of my list because training on some of these programs can be a challenge. That'll
So if
give you a
degree
leg up.
isn't the most important, it would be the actual training in the program.
In accounting, a lot of people get on-the-job experience. You kind of have to have the basic, what's a debit and a credit, and then you get this on-the-job experience that speaks volumes.
Is it difficult to find folks who have experience with grant funding situations?
Yes, it is, and it's important to have that experience level with the grants or what we call sponsored research. Yes, because the grants are all different. I mean, you can have your federal grants, and then within the federal category, your NIH grants, and then there's private foundations. So that is really key.
And do you find that you have to kind of grow a lot of that skill set in-house, or are you able to recruit when you need to?
Excellent question, because we just talked about that this morning, and that is not my strongest area. So I'm going to be working on my education in terms of grants. So we are, I guess you do sort of grow it in-house, but you have to have a base in-house in order to train people properly, because if you have people that don't really know what they're doing, you'll get so many things flying around. Is this, you get a lot of rules flying around that don't apply to everything. So it is key to have some people with some great grant experience available and then continue your training.
IT and writing, two areas a lot of people think they know how to do, right? And may not know how to do them in your specific areas. I'm wondering if each of you could speak to that, and then I want to come to you, America, and talk a little bit about people coming into your type of program.
So you're asking the background that one needs, or?
Yeah. How would somebody get into a job like yours?
Well, science writing is either scientists who have decided they want to become journalists or journalists who have a strong interest in science. And so you can't really get around the journalism part. You need to be a solid writer, and you get to be a better writer by writing a lot and reading a lot. And as far as people breaking in, you have to have, you don't necessarily have to, if you're already a PhD in science, in a science, then you don't necessarily have to have a journalism background, but you would definitely need to have a journalism degree if that's your route. And you need to have a strong portfolio that shows that you can write in a bunch of different mediums. And so some people just make that stuff up, create pieces, or do internships and even say, I'll write for you for free in order to get published. So that's, I think, how you get into it.
Well, I mean, I think IT is an interesting area because there are a variety of different positions, but sort of looking at sort of the entry level ones, it's definitely much more of an on the job learning. Now, most of the time when we're looking for entry level positions, we do like to see somebody with a rigorous academic background, but we're not normally too concerned about what degree that might be in. I think in our department we have folks with degrees in business, chemical engineering, biology, applied mathematics, probably some other ones I'm forgetting right now. The big issue being is it is nice for folks to have sort of a basic entry-level undergraduate experience in sciences, physics, biology, certainly a strong underpinning in math. But I think by and large, the most common misconception I normally see is everybody thinks they should get a degree in computer science to come do IT work. And I would say that that's pretty patently false. I'd say that by and large, software engineering has about as much to do with IT as a theoretical physicist and an engineer have in common. Yeah, they both work with things, but it's sort of, they're kind of far removed from what they're actually doing day to day. And we see it all the time. We've got computational biologists who are great folks. They write code all day long, but my gosh, they can't even figure out how to get a printer set up on their computer. So fortunately, we're there to take care of that for them so they don't have to. But if I was, what I normally tell folks that are trying to get into IT, the best way really is to be looking strongly at part-time jobs and internships. If you can do internships or other similar kinds of organizations, even if that's just working at your college's help desk as a student employee, that's really a real fast ticket in. And we've hired plenty of people whose only previous experience was doing, college, res hall help desk for a year or two part-time. But you know what? That really shows that that we're able to gauge at that point whether they really have the soft skills, because I think a lot of people underestimate the level of soft skills required in this particular discipline. You're working with a large variety of people, especially in these areas, a lot of people who are coming from very different backgrounds with very different levels of English capabilities, with very different levels of people skills of their own. A lot of people who think they're very, very important. And so you really need folks, especially in your help desk, who are really able to handle it. Because I think a lot of people forget, and they sort of look at a lot of these fields, and the irony is that generally it tends to be your most entry-level positions are the people who are getting the most face time outside your department. And so those are the people who are out representing you. And so it's very important that they have excellent customer service skills. And we'll often hire customer service as our #1 top priority individual. A lot of the other stuff, if they're a good, solid person who's got a good academic rigor, I'm sure they can learn the stuff as we go along. But it's, have they had that ability to interact with people consistently over time, or are they going to burn out and start getting angry within a couple of weeks? Because that's just not going to work for either them or us. So.
Always warms the cockles of my heart when I hear people talking about the soft skills. That's what I teach. Mirko, how about for your area?
So for my area, actually, as I've been listening to everyone talk, I mean, I can take in, everyone said something that there's a component in my area of science. And so, but the bottom line is, you just have to get, some level of experience. And being at the university and getting a bachelor's is great. However, a lot of the skills you acquire just on the job, really surpass a lot of the things you're trained as at the university level. And so for me, I mean, I actually volunteered here at the Hutch when I was 19, doing some very general data entry. And that does wonders, because you just get familiar with what's required. And then you just move forward continually. Like, someone offered me an autopsy position, and I did that, and then I met someone who asked me if I would like to be an undergrad assistant, and I did that for volunteer work, and just getting time in the lab, just any type of lab, is critical to be in the sciences. And then you like it, because I think you have to have some sort of passion to be some sort of general biologist, to do microbiology. And there's tons of things you can do. I have a friend that is right now doing clinical microbiology at Harborview. So he'll take the swabs from different samples. When you get checked for strep throat, he checks that. And so he'll check those. And then I know someone that's a phlebotomist, and all these different aspects. And it just depends what you want to do. And so I think a bachelor's degree is critical for some aspects. However, to really get into science, just volunteering is the #1 thing. And then you figure out if you want to get a master's or a PhD, and from there you can really direct your own path. Because I know people that are lab managers, and I know people that have gone to the business side and have gone to pharmaceutics. And that's a big thing, and it's very important. You learn a lot of skills in graduate level training. Primarily writing. Writing is super critical at the graduate level education, because you need funding. And so I would say, someone who has an English degree, who has a passion for science, would probably do great at the doctorate level.
So I'm curious, did any of you have mentors along the way? Yeah, or somebody who was pivotal at some point, at the right point in your career, to help get you moving in a direction that was useful to you. Could you talk a little bit about how you kind of found your mentor, or they found you, how that hookup happened, and how you've used that relationship?
Well, I'll say you're never too old for a mentor, because for me, being new in this science industry and the nonprofit industry, we have a director of finance at Seattle Biomed who is teaching me so much. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm real solid at. These statements I know how to do, but a lot of the grant accounting and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to learning from him. So
And so
that's my
that went
current
right
mentor.
Because you're in the same organization and there's a reporting relationship involved in that.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
How about for the others of you? America, you indicated you've had a mentor.
Yeah, you know, I've had a mentor, and he actually pushed me to go to graduate school and pushed me to come into this department in particular. And you know, he's just been there and guided me, and he still talks to me. We still talk, and it's critical to just have someone to listen to you, and just someone that will give you feedback on what you think might be important, and then he'll actually tell you if it is. And that's a huge aspect of just finding a career, having someone listening to you. And so with me, you know, he was really there to just guide me through what I want to do. And he helped me find myself, you know, at a very young age. You know, I was, you know, 21, and, you know, he helped me really guide myself of where I want to go with my career. So I really thank him for that.
Does anybody else have a mentor to talk about?
I currently have a colleague who's been a great mentor. He worked for about 12 years for the Seattle Times as a reporter, and I've learned so much about journalism from him, and we trade a lot. I mean, I share a lot of institutional knowledge because I've been here a long time and probably understand the science a little better, but he's just so good at the art of writing, and he's a great editor, and you know, you learn from really harsh editing, and he's not harsh, but you know, red pen is not the enemy. It just means you have work to do. So,
More opportunity.
yeah.
So I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. What kinds of things would you like to know about these folks and their career paths, or what is exciting about the work that they do, gets them propelled out of bed every day? Are you going to be quiet on me, huh? Well, I'll keep talking. I have a problem with that. So what is something that just really totally rocks your boat? I mean, you really get up in the morning thinking, I can't wait to go do this.
So for me, again, the energy conservation is just fascinating to me. In this room, there are sensors in the ducts that detect how much carbon dioxide is in this room. And if this room doesn't have any people in it, it's going to reduce the air changes happening in here. It's something invisible to all of you, but energy is conserved when we're not pumping air through here when no one's in here. I'm working on a project. Again, I think it's fascinating. We've got hot water pipes all over the buildings, and so the hot water starts at a tank, and it doesn't go out and recirculate through those tanks and stay hot. It goes out and it has this electric tape on the pipe that keeps it hot in those pipes when it's not being used, so that it's hot once you use it at your sink. So I started looking into, well, how is this system working? It's 20 years old. And I investigated and researched. I crawled on top of ducts. I did all kinds of stuff, and I found out a lot of information about this system, and I've designed a way to get rid of that system that costs us about $15,000 a year in electricity and transfer that over to completely get rid of that cost. And then that heat is generated by steam in the future, but we have a separate energy conservation project that is calling for more steam. So we'll basically be saving $15,000 a year in electrical costs by switching out that system. That's the kind of stuff that I just love, and it keeps me running. And part of the excitement about it is when I start something like that, I don't know how it will end. So the discovery throughout the whole process, and finding new ways to figure out what I need to figure out in order to justify making that project work, it's fascinating to me. And that's what gets me running in the morning.
Well, America, besides not having to go to the autopsy room anymore, what gets you juiced up in the morning like you can't wait to go to work?
Actually, very similar very, very similar things. I mean, I propose questions, and my projects are to address them and to answer them myself. And that really is what drives me, to really prove that to prove that I'm right. This is what drives me. And then if I'm wrong, to prove why I was wrong and to really show I was actually right to begin with. And, you know, that's my PhD. It's why was I right, and why am I going to be right in the future? And you know what? It propels me to be better and to get up in the morning and go do experiments and go read papers of why they think I could be wrong and show why they're wrong. And, you know, that really gets me up in the morning, and I'm writing training grants and these different fellowships and to, you know, receive funding, and then I try to show that my funding's worth it by doing these projects and experiments, and that really is why I love it, to answer these questions. And hopefully, the long-term goal is to hopefully have some insight that proves to be useful and that can really help people. I mean, that was the difference between a PhD and medical school. And I feel that if I get lucky at one point or stumble upon something, I could really help numerous people. That's why I get up.
Andrew?
Yeah, actually, I really like what he said there at the end, because I went down a similar journey of looking at what degrees a couple years ago, back when I did my graduate degree. And what really struck me as I was looking at both MPA and MBA programs is there's no offense to any MBAs in the room, but I went to the interviews for those programs and realized I didn't really like the motivation of any of the people in the room, to be completely honest with you. And I really liked all the people that were in the MPA programs and what their goals were. And so, I would say that one of the things that really gets me going is the missions of all of our organizations. They're all similarly aligned, that they have a mission that's more altruistic than just making proceeds for some shareholder who's sitting on a yacht right now, hitting golf balls off the side of the Sound. So, we all have that to look forward in all of our organizations, that our organizations are doing something to make the world a better place and make the lives of those people in the world greater. So that's the sort of the prime altruistic mission. I personally, of course, enjoy IT myself. I think one of the great advantages of being in these kind of organizations is they have a very outsized IT capability in comparison to a lot of other folks. And I always laugh when I take people on our data center and I show them around and I point out that, if this was a law firm, we'd do it all in, a hundredth of space. And of course, it'd also be 100th the fun. So, so that I really enjoy. And I think one of the things I enjoy about being director is I really love looking at cost-benefit analysis and looking at what is the most economic way to do things and what is really bringing us the best value. As nonprofit organizations, I really believe that we have a mission and a mandate to ourselves to make sure that we're doing things in a cost-effective and beneficial way to those that gave us the money. When NIH or the other grantors give us money, it's to do the best work, the best science with that money, and to make sure that we spend it in a responsible fashion. I really enjoy making sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck and getting so that the money can be spent as much as possible on the mission. So.
Jean, how about you?
Well, right now at Seattle Biomed, we have a program that's really exciting that I find very exciting. It's a focus on women's health. And there's a women's focus group. They call themselves the Harambee 50. And Harambee is a Kenyan word that means to come together for a cause. So there's a group of women that are we're working really hard right now to bring awareness around women's health, because women's health really is global health. And, if we keep women healthy around the world, then the families are healthier, the children are healthy. And that's what's really driving me right now. I'm really inspired by that.
I think that for a couple decades now, have just really been inspired by the mission of the Hutchinson Center. You were talking about earlier, we all work for great organizations. And I don't have any desire to do what I do for profit or for an agency where I'm representing whomever comes in the door. It's really important to me to tell this story. And I feel a responsibility to donors and to the public to help people understand what our story is, to understand that the lives are saved, or what their dollar has gleaned, or to just, to share, just the fundamental understanding of life that happens in the labs. And so I find that exciting and compelling.
So I'm going to start with you, Colleen. Let's get a headline from each of you of something exciting that's happening right here, or right where you are, wherever your organization is. What's something that's just really exciting that's happening?
Well, there's always really exciting science going on here. Personally, the things I've enjoyed writing about recently have been the progress that we're making in cord blood transplantation as an alternative stem cell source. And also, we've recently had a pancreatic cancer breakthrough. Pancreatic cancer is a really hard one to treat, and one of our researchers has recently found sort of the Achilles heel of pancreatic cancer, making it vulnerable to treatment. And then in my field, we're really increasing, we just had a telethon today. We're in the middle of a public awareness campaign. We're really increasing our focus at the center of telling our story. There's a misconception that most of our funding comes from the government, or all of it, and a lot of it does, but we also rely heavily on private support. And getting people involved and seeing themselves as partners in this research is really important. So.
Thanks. Jean, you've mentioned a couple of things.
Well, I already spoke to the women's health issue, and I think right now, the other thing at Seattle Biomed is really, I think we're getting, well, I'm not sure if I should say we're getting close, but I like to hope we're getting close to a solution to malaria. I mean, malaria is such a devastating disease. We're working very hard at Seattle Biomed to come up with a vaccine.
Andrew?
Well, I think we're pretty excited about moving down here to the South Lake Union folks so we can be closer to everybody else last year. So that's been sort of a big project that's been occupying us now for, I dare say, years. And of course, even after you move, you continue working on that project for a year or two at least. So, we're finally kind of feeling like we're at home. We've also got some great new faculty members that have joined us recently, one of which is, I think, almost double the number of graduate students we have in our facility. So we're really excited about that as well.
Headlines. So in my lab, we're actually working on how to understanding the mechanism of how vaccines work. And so that's something that's really exciting, and we're really dissecting that out, and hopefully we'll have a good understanding of that in the upcoming future, and hopefully apply that to something such as HIV.
So in the exciting world of facility management, we actually have one of the greatest things that we look forward to is campus expansion. We've got a new building coming online across the street at Eastlake, and we've put a lot of work between the facilities management team, architects, engineers, to make it a very above and beyond the standard for energy conservation. We've done some very unique things over there, and that coming online is going to be a huge deal to us. And one of the parts of that we're preparing for, we're going to connect a tunnel from that building underneath Eastlake Avenue into our boiler room. So that's no simple task, but it's an exciting one for us. We like our buildings to be connected. That's important to us for the work that gets done. And so it's a huge task on our part, but really exciting in the expansion of the campus and that connection to a new and above and beyond the normal standard type of building.
Does that mean no sky bridge?
The sky bridge is in the works as well. So the tunnel would be more for service work. The glassware can all go down through the tunnel and get to glass wash. Otherwise, we'd end up using disposable equipment in the labs, and we just have to throw it away. So that service tunnel is really important to us, and we're trying to work on that sky bridge as well, so we can connect researchers to researchers and make it really easy to get around to all the buildings on campus.
Well, please help me thank our panelists for being here